what do they care about? Let's be real. They care about making money, they care about having fun, and they care about belonging somewhere.
So look, retail does obviously care about making money. That is partially why all of us in crypto are here. We do want to make money, and there's nothing wrong with making money. However, I do think there is something potentially wrong with fully giving into the idea of crypto only being a casino. Hello and welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Coinage. I'm your host, Zach Guzman, coming to you live from our Brooklyn studio in New York City as we kick off yet another week in crypto with Bitcoin right now. North of 65, dare I say, flirting with 66,000 as a huge win for the Web3 gaming space has us chatting Avalanche this week. And President Trump kicks off his own little crypto project we're going to dig into a little bit later. A lot to discuss on the show, and I want to kick off with a reminder, actually, as things have been popping off in SWE, a reminder that you can stake with us here at Coinage as we rate more than $200 million. We have $200 million plus staked with us at our Coinage X-Dike partnership across more than 40 chains, and you can stake with us at Coinage.media to support our outlet as well as co-own it with us. So exciting to highlight that as we continue to operate on all those chains, and excited to have more people staking with us. Appreciate you guys, and shout out to you guys for doing so and helping in decentralization. We're about to pass Coinbase, as it were, on the SWE blockchain. So I think that's pretty cool when you think about how much is staked with us. If you want to contribute, go ahead and do that because it does help us run the show and continue to operate as the only community-owned Web3 outlet in the space. But I digress. Let's kick things off here as we dig into weekly flows per usual to start our Monday show. And an interesting bounce back in terms of the digital asset product investment inflows we saw, according to CoinShares. $407 million last week is what we saw. Of course, per usual as well, most of that coming in through Bitcoin inflows of $419 million. ETH, as it were, actually saw a flip back into the red. So a continued theme there in terms of weakness as far as investment coming from institutional investors, mostly not seeing a pop-off still to today. But at least Bitcoin holding the water for the crypto spaces. We are seeing, again, 407 on net across all digital asset investment products. That is important to highlight as we kick off this week looking back, but that's backwards looking. There's a little bit on the Bitcoin front, perhaps to be a little bit more forward looking. And that is when we look at trying out something new here. Trying out something new on the show today, my friends, a second laptop to flip through, and that is miners. We're looking at the way that profitability for miners fell in September. That may be potentially one overhang to keep an eye on when we think about how many of those stocks in the public miner investment space have been hammered. Maybe not so much Marathon Digital and those who have pivoted to maybe throw some of their computing resources through or shift, should I say, away from Bitcoin, maybe a little bit more over to the AI vehicles and products, and that has boosted them. But those who have doubled down, tripled down on Bitcoin mining, not faring so well. So sometimes we do see some of those miners selling off some of the Bitcoin that they have. That could lead to some pricing pressure, but not so to kick off the week. As I said, briefly cracking through 66,000, so we'll see where things go. But that's important to highlight. October could be a harder month for the miners as network hash rate is currently 11% higher, while Bitcoin price is only about 5%. That according to Jeffries. And of course, maybe they just don't want to dump. At least they had when times were good before the hash rate before it got way more complicated to mine Bitcoin. They were still sitting pretty with kind of the financials as far as the way that they were able to raise back then. So just something to keep an eye on. Not always all pros across the board when it comes to Bitcoin price. Could be an overhang, but we'll have to wait and see. Outside of that, though, it's not just Bitcoin and not just Ethereum, as we have been highlighting for most of the weeks over the summer doldrums, but increasingly, we are seeing more people focus in on meme coins. And of course, Murad, the man who stole the show, I should say, at Singapore, Token 2049, had been talking quite a bit about that. But before we show what he said, I do want to highlight what Sean Farrell told us, because our interview with him popped off. More than 4,000 of you watched that one. If you haven't yet, as always, Sean Farrell not backing down from his $115,000 price call. But he did say, in order to meme coins for them to continue to rally, you do want to see Bitcoin pop off. And that is his thesis, essentially, that you can't really have a meme coin altcoin summer until you do first see a new all-time high in the Bitcoin price. And at 66K, not too far from 74. So just want to play a little bit of what Sean told us last week when it comes to Bitcoin leading some of the wealth creation farther on the risk curve. Take a listen to what Sean Farrell told us.
I think ultimately you do need Bitcoin. It's still 60% of the market. You need Bitcoin to rally and have some of that wealth creation effect happen, and people can rotate their coins from Bitcoin, from their wealth from Bitcoin into these other alts. So I do think to have this face ripping broader breadth rally, you do need Bitcoin to move higher, to break out. I'm not necessarily convinced that you need well, we can talk more about the election. We probably do wait. We probably don't see that until the election, but not necessarily because of the binary outcome thesis. But it is probably around the time that happens.
And we will talk a little bit more about the election, as you can see in our rundown over here. We will be talking a little bit more about Trump in just a second and the election. But before we do, of course, it is Bitcoin's price rising and then spilling over to meme coins that we are watching. And as I said, Sean Farrell in the camp that it definitely needs to happen before you can see a meme coin rally. But on the other side, you've got Murad, this guy who's been making the rounds on crypto Twitter. And look, I think it's fine. I want to be clear on this. I don't think meme coins by themselves are bad. But if it was all the crypto industry became, I think crypto would be dead. And I think I think there are a lot of people in that camp, a lot of people pushing back heavily against Murad's thesis of the meme coin supercycle being the thing that only matters in crypto. And to be fair, I don't even know if he believes that. He just does have his own holdings in meme coins that he wants to pump. And pump them he did on the stage at Token 2049. Do you just want to play a little bit of his part of kind of landing on the thesis that meme coins are a more efficient way of tokenizing community in the era of Web3, and that most of the other layer ones and alt ones that we'll talk about in just a second, because as I said, Avalanche is popping off right now with their huge game, that most of those are slow rugs and also not needed. So on the far right, if we can call it that, we've got Murad pumping meme coins. Here's what he has to say about his stash.
Does retail care about some blockchain being slightly more private? No. Do they care about some blockchain being slightly faster? No. Do they care about ZK snarks? No. What do they care about? Let's be real. They care about making money, they care about having fun, and they care about belonging somewhere.
All right, so look, retail does obviously care about making money. That is partially why all of us in crypto are here. We do want to make money, and there's nothing wrong with making money. However, I do think there is something potentially wrong with fully giving into the idea of crypto only being a casino. And as I said in my thread, I think it's a little bit wrong to maybe replace one casino where the VCs win and dump on retail with another casino where KOLs, like Murad, or other people can maybe stack up a shit ton of coins and then dump those. But if everyone's winning, I don't think anyone's going to be crying foul. And so far, it does seem like most people are winning. I do have Texas up over here, Murad's list of coins, if we do want to give him a shout out on things that he's calling Colts. His highest conviction Colts buying spree arc, as he calls them. One of those ones to call out would be SPX 6900 and Giga Chad. Those are some of the memes that people have been talking about. Of course, Mogcoin and PopCat have been talked about for a while. Harry Potter, Obama Sonic 10 Inu, we actually mentioned last year. Our head writer at the time, Zach Abrams, had joked, hey, maybe we should put our money into this. If we did, just $1,000, I'm pretty sure that would be like $4 million right now. So joke's on us, because we never actually did put our money into that one. So look, there are a lot of meme coins here that do pop off. I tend to think it's a bit of a crapshoot and fully take your bets if you want, but it's not necessarily something I think I could sit here and say rationally, hey, here are some options out there, including maybe, I guess there's, as we said, SPX 69,000. There's also now NDX 69,000 as like maybe a NASDAQ turn on the SPX one. And I don't know if you wanted to take a flyer on that one. That market cap is only at 10 million right now. And I don't know. I don't know if you can rationally say, hey, that one pumped because Murad likes it and it's SPX 69,000 or 6,900. You could go with the NASDAQ 6,900. And that's about as rational of advice. Again, not financial advice, but I think as rational thought you can dedicate to some of these things. And that's where it becomes difficult to even talk about. But anyways, just wanted to highlight that because it is still talk of the town, even though, by the way, I think some of this, as we've seen in the meme coin land and NFT space, a lot of this stuff is a bit botted. So traders beware, and good luck to you all. Live by the sword, die by the sword when it comes to meme coins sometimes. Outside of that, though, I do want to shift to maybe things that are more in the realm of, hey, where's the utility? And I think this is an exciting one because, first of all, I'm going to be going down to Avalanche's conference this week. So down in Argentina, excited to be moderating down there and chatting with the team and learning a little bit more about what's going on with some of their early bets. If you recall, Avalanche is one of those tokens, and I'll bring up the chart over here to Texas, but Avalanche is one of those tokens that's kind of been left behind when it comes to being one of them that had for a really long time tried to compete with Solana. And being one of those layer ones in the old cycle, looking at how they could also come to play in this space. As Solana's popped off, you kind of have Avalanche, if we can really zoom out here, still a long way to go to reclaim some of those prior highs. But I do think we are on the precipice of one of their big bets paying off. And of course, basically everyone in the layer one game, including Sui now, one of the darlings of this cycle, have made huge bets on gaming. And one of the biggest bets to pay off right now, Texas, is off the grid. And we have a little bit to play on off the grid this time around. But mainly, the thing worth highlighting is that it's one of the top games right now on Epic Games' platform. And this is a lot to unpack here, but I do want to spend the time on it because I think it's important. Because if you've made an Avalanche bet in the past and it hasn't necessarily paid off, part of the reason is they've been playing the long game. And so you kind of have to wait around. When we're talking about a game that is now at the top and basically going head-to-head with Fortnite. Also, this is written by Andre Bagansky, our former head writer as well. So shout out to Andre. We're showing your article here. Look, if you're going to make huge bets like that, you need to give them time to play out. And I think this is a huge one. If you're not familiar with Off the Grid, I just want to play a clip because this is one of the top Twitch streamers playing Off the Grid and realizing that, hey, this is a pretty big, important piece because, as we heard from Yatsu from Animoca Brands, which we'll also play a recap of just to put this all together, essentially, Avalanche is now kind of the platform that a lot of these AAA studio level games, they could launch and use their own layer one, previously called subnets on Avalanche, and basically own the entire economy in their game rather than have to go through the App Store and pay 20% or whatever the monopoly fee is to Apple. And I think it makes a lot of sense, and don't take it from me, take it from one of the top Twitch streamers talking about Off the Grid as he's playing it to, I think, more than 1 million people watching his stream talking about, maybe he doesn't say Avalanche by name, but take a listen to what one of the top Twitch streamers was saying as he was playing Off the Grid this weekend.
Yeah, it's kind of like Steam. That's kind of what they're doing. They're doing a Steam marketplace, but in the game, and they're just using, like, the blockchain as a tool, right? Like, that's what I was surprised when people didn't... Like, I'm surprised more people haven't done that. Every game always does this weird thing, like, where they're trying to make it have, like, this insane value, and, like, you keep it in your fucking website wallet or whatever. Like, you don't need that. You can just use the blockchain as a tool to make your marketplace. So then you're essentially just making a Steam marketplace with the blockchain, right? So like, I'm surprised that it took so many people to take so long and they went through like the hassle when they could have just done this. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a Steam marketplace. And instead of having to build your own Steam marketplace and spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to make your own Steam marketplace, you just use the tool that's available. Like, I'm genuinely surprised that it took so long for someone to do that.
Teammate eliminated by enemy.
Now, as far as it took someone so long to do that, keep in mind, you kind of have to have the game to really onboard all these users and get people excited by it, because you can't launch a shitty game. We've seen that before, because then as soon as the tokenomics evaporate, you can, as we've seen, by the way, on Telegram and all these other things, on Axie Infinity and a bunch of other games, you can have a bunch of people come on because they're there to speculate. As I said, meme coins are really pumping that theory right now. But if there's nothing to have anyone stick around, they're all going to leave, especially once price starts to dip. And then you have a cascading flip to the downside. It's essentially a death spiral, if you want to call it that, even though it's not a stablecoin. You have that playing out. But what we have here is a very good game that is onboarding a lot of people. In fact, you got Goon, one of the co-founders of Avalanche, tweeting about all of the numbers that we just saw in Off the Grid. 5.5 million wallets, as he's calling it, the rise of Web3 gaming right in front of us. 53 million transactions, top 3 shooter game on Twitch, 1 million plus hours streamed on Twitch, reach of the game 800 million, built on its own Avalanche L1. So as I said, we're going to learn a lot more about this week as I go down to the Avalanche Summit in Buenos Aires. Got to work on my Spanish a little bit, but we're going to be down there. It's going to be good times. So we'll report back, but I think it's a huge leap forward. And if we look at the Avalanche chart over here too, I think, it does make you wonder about how much of this will play out in revamping this chart. Because if you think about how far Avalanche has to run, people slept on it basically the whole last cycle, and they made a very different bet. Solana went in the arena of meme coins. Avalanche put money into longer term, longer tail bets that could potentially be paying off huge dividends right now, not just in gaming, but also with financial giants in terms of tokenizing their funds. Both of those things do not happen overnight. And so I think there are a lot of people sleeping on Avalanche right now. I will just throw that out there. And to put a button on it, the last bit is, I want to highlight what Yatsu told us a couple weeks ago too, because his whole point was that, look, you can't build Web3 gaming unless you have an ability to distribute games the way that we just saw with Off the Grid. Animoca's bet on Ton. A lot of people have bet on Ton as Telegram's way to reach almost 1 billion users through that platform. I don't know how many people necessarily want to play games like Hamster Combat in that app right now. Again, it takes time to build a really good game, so let's see what happens with them. But Avalanche is there with Off the Grid right now. And Yatsu told us distribution is the name of the game. So if they can follow up on this one with another banger and they have everyone building on Avalanche, first to market usually wins when it's something this huge. Take a listen to what Yat told us, though, because I think it's interesting to think about the distribution play and why you can't really have Web3 gaming unless you build the rails first. Here's what he told us.
Actually, there was no sort of way to really distribute your Web3 game at scale because Apple, Google, Steam, all the major distribution platforms, be it PC and mobile, basically restricted you. And I think Apple just recently said, oh, okay, fine, you can have NFTs in your application. There just can't be any utility for the NFT. I mean, seriously? Like, what's the point in all that, right? So this is really just sort of making sure that you won't have success on the App Store.
And one last thing, too, to highlight here, there was a bit of an overhang. I would be remiss if I didn't say, hey, what's the idea in terms of betting on Avalanche now, right? And if we go back to the chart, Texas over here on the Avalanche side, I think, this might be one of those things that was overhanging as we watched the Terra bankruptcy play out. One of those things was that the Avalanche Foundation had sold about, I think, $100 million in Avalanche tokens to be held as part of the Luna Foundation Guard, one of those tokens that they would hold in treasury to back Luna. And when it all unraveled, basically, myself included, we were asking questions. What's going to happen with that $100 million worth of AVAX that Luna controls? And news out over the weekend around who is going to be controlling those tokens. And the Avalanche Foundation says it has reached a deal to repurchase nearly 2 million tokens that they sold to the Luna Foundation Guard. So that overhang might be removed as well. Those tokens could have been dumped on the open market and hurt the price of Avalanche. And now that's been removed. So just worth noting, potentially also one of those big overhangs that could have kept people on the sidelines also being lifted. So just throwing that out there to maybe highlight, if you're looking for a bet on one token that's been overlooked, Avalanche has been on our list for a bit. Of course, full disclosure, Avalabs being one of those investors in our production company, Trustless Media, I need to disclose that. But at the same time, it's one of those tokens that has been beaten down and not seen a rally. But we're sitting on a huge, I think, catalyst when it comes to Off the Grid, and people are just starting to wake up to the fact that, hey, wait a minute, this is built on Avalanche. So we'll report what we hear down there. That's basically all we can give you. To our last story that we are highlighting on today's news recap show. Again, we do this every month or every week if you're just tuning in with us for the first time today. Check out all the headlines at Coinage.media if you want, and you can stay with us as well. But the other thing that we are digging into is, I think we have this chart, Texas, of the polling results. Trump taking an edge in the election. Of course, we are now less than a month away from Election Day. And if you look at the polls of polls, this one from NBC News, this is a national poll, so not necessarily a poll of polls, but conducted October 4th to 8th. And essentially, Trump's closed the gap. His highest rating in the polls that NBC News has done, at the very least, as you see those, now up to 48-48. So a dead heat between Trump and Harris. I guess technically some of these polls were Biden if you go beyond the deep blue there. But nonetheless, a lot of people reacting to this. And let's also pull up over here the odds from, there we go, Polymarket 2, because I think that's another thing to watch. A lot of people say Polymarket isn't a fair place to look at election odds. And I understand that because it does kind of self-select maybe people who are in the crypto space and they may be putting their money where their mouth is. But look, they are putting their money where their mouth is. So it also shows you wouldn't make that bet unless you were somewhat convinced by looking at polling data that you want to put your real money into this. And this is a pretty large market. This is almost, I think, what is that? $2 billion almost locked up in this betting contract. So it's a lot of money. And when you consider that, I mean, a lot of people have said, look, obviously Trump might provide a larger boost to the crypto space. But on the flip side, even though we haven't heard much from Kamala Harris, there is still hope that whatever happens in the congressional or Senate races, as we discussed with Sean Farrell last week, there is still hope that regardless of how the presidential election shakes out, you are still going to have a shift pro-crypto among the legislators who are working on this, and hope that we could, as a country, get this right. And even if it's not us, there are other countries out there also working on ways to make this right when it comes to regulating crypto. So it's not always on the back of the US. However, it is rather important for a lot of the companies out there, as we've heard from crypto founders, including Tolly at Solana and all these other founders, John Wu as well. You cannot have the US basically regulate crypto away and still see it accelerate at the rate that we've seen it accelerate in past cycles if you just completely wipe off crypto in the US. So it is important, but from what we're seeing, I don't know how realistic it is to say, okay, Trump closing the gap means crypto went up. That's what CoinShares wrote in their weekly report, is that basically investors are shifting to crypto because Trump has now closed the gap. Though I'm not necessarily in the camp that that is the end-all be-all as to why. We are, of course, witnessing more activity when it comes to crypto popping off. So I don't want to say it's only Trump, of course. I know I might get hate from some of you watching that it's, hey, give Trump his due. We'll see what happens. But I do think, it's not the only thing that matters this year from the experts we've had on the show. It is, I think, just a result of people moving past the importance of the presidential election, at least when it comes to number go up. Anyways, that's most of everything that we've been watching. If we missed anything, hit us up, tell us in the comments, reply to this on Twitter, or if you watch on YouTube, wherever you're watching us, let us know if we missed anything, or subscribe to our Substack, where we also recap all of the things we just recapped, and you can let us know. We've got an exciting interview from the CEO over at Doodles coming out this week, as well as an update on the deep end space with Greg Osuri from Akash. Excited to be bringing you those interviews on what is a wild week in crypto. They always are. For everybody here at Coinage, thanks for tuning in. I'm Zach Guzman, the host, coming to you live from our studio in Brooklyn. As a reminder, you can check out all the big headlines in crypto and co-own this, the only Web3 outlet owned by our NFT holders. Join in with us and the co-founder of Netflix at Coinage.media. We'll see you again soon.